In Colorado, there is a fabled trail that crosses over snow-capped mountains, lush green valleys, roaring rivers, and enchanted forest. It is a trail that stretches over 485 miles through the Rocky Mountains, where you may encounter dangerous creatures at every turn. A trail where its mighty travelers reminisce of epic adventures over fireside chats. This is the Colorado Trail.
Nah, I'm just messing. I figured I'd have a bit of fun and make one of those dramatic intros to my video. Anyway, in 2018, I did have a dream to backpack the Colorado Trail. And in September of 2019, that dream became a reality as I started the adventure of a lifetime. This is the Colorado Trail. This is how I fell in love with backpacking. This is my 5-year epic journey.
In 2019, I hiked segment 1 through segment 6, tackling the first 104 miles of the trail. It was the week of Labor Day, and my family dropped me off at the Waterton Canyon trailhead, just outside of Denver, Colorado, and my journey had begun. Segment 1 was a no-frills section. I knew there'd be a 6-mile road walk with a chance to encounter bighorn sheep along the way, and possibly a bear, as there was a sighting earlier that week. I camped in segment 1 that first night after a short day of hiking only 9 miles. That night, I dreamed of what the trail would bring this week. Little did I know, I was about to get tested to the point of quitting. I will never forget segment 2 because I think I had heat exhaustion. My big mistake here was hiking through this burned area during the middle of the day. I remember starting segment 2 around lunch at the bridge crossing the South Platte River. I had a good meal, felt well hydrated, but was not prepared for the heat that day. The next water source wasn't until the firehouse station towards the end of the segment, approximately 10 miles. I thought I had enough water to make the hike, but I did not anticipate the exposure to the sun and hiking in the mid-90s. I recall dragging myself to the fire station and chugging about 2 or 3 liters of water straight from the spigot. Then, I just threw it all up. You talk about embracing the suck. Well, it hit me on the second day, and I thought to myself, am I cut out for this?
I think I got a little overheated there. Didn't realize how warm and open that was going to be. It was only about 10 miles, and I figured I'd be fine. And 5 of it was going to be flat, just flat, wide open, no shade, 90 degrees, probably 2:30 in the afternoon, so I probably hit it at the absolute worst time.
Luckily, I began to feel better the next morning after getting some food in my stomach. I figured I would press on with segment 3, take it slow, and just see how the day unfolded. Segments 3 and 4 are kind of a blur. I remember walking through a gently rolling forest, grateful to have shade and no big climbs. I do recall a thunderstorm one night and felt like lightning was popping all around me. This is when you start thinking, why am I putting myself through heat exhaustion and bone-rattling storms just to sleep outside and eat dehydrated foods? Then I finally came out of the forest and into this beautiful valley surrounded by mountains. I remember thinking to myself, this is what I needed to encourage my spirits and press forward. Segment 5 is where the view started opening up and it began to feel more like the Colorado Trail that I had envisioned in my mind. I recall making my way to Kenosha Pass and could see the mountains I would be tackling in my future. This is also where I learned how temperamental the weather could be on the trail. I was hiking through an aspen forest when suddenly, dime-sized hail started to hammer me for about 5 to 10 minutes.
Had burning up, scorching temps. I've had cool weather. Now, as you can see on the ground, I've got hail.
Then all of a sudden, it was 85 and sunny. 2 days ago, I had heat exhaustion. Now I'm getting pelted by hail. You gotta love this trail. Segment 6 was my favorite section this entire year. Let me show you why. As I hiked over Georgia Pass and down to Breckenridge, this was the moment I started falling in love with backpacking. Even through the heat exhaustion and crazy storms and a few sleepless nights, this is what I wanted to do. The Colorado Trail now had a special place in my heart, and I couldn't wait to see what next year would bring.
In 2020, I had planned to hike segments 7 through 11, again in September during Labor Day week. This would have taken me from Breckenridge all the way into Twin Lakes, covering about 87 miles, but the weather had something to say about that. Segment 7 is a beautiful section of the trail. You are hiking out of Breckenridge, over a 10-mile range, and viewing Copper Mountain Resort on the other side. Let me tell you, there's nothing like coming over a pass on the Colorado Trail. I hiked only about 9 to 10 miles that day and camped towards the end of Segment 7. Lucky for me, I had phone coverage being so close to Copper Mountain. Lucky because I had called my wife and she informed me of a sudden big snowstorm that was going to hit this area the next day and that I should probably seek shelter. So that night, I made reservations at a lodge in Copper Mountain for the following day to wait out the storm. Segment 8 will be one to remember. I only had a couple miles left of Segment 7 until I reached the Copper Mountain Resort, the beginning of Segment 8. The resort area is literally 500 feet off the trail, and I was able to easily find the lodge where I had made reservations the night before. The storm did hit that night. I checked the forecast for the next few days and everything looked good. I had the gear I needed for the temps that were being forecasted, and I decided to continue with my hike.
I figured I would go as far as I could, and if the snow just got too bad, I can always turn around and come back to Copper Mountain. Luckily, that wasn't the case, and I was able to continue my journey, slowly albeit, but I did press forward. The thing I remember most about that day was how quiet it was hiking in the snow, and I didn't see another human or footprints of another human for the next 30 miles. I recall slogging my way through the snow, being the first to break trail and coming over Surly Pass. I almost lost my breath at how beautiful it was. As difficult as it was to climb that pass, the sight on the other side was unforgettable. Imagine the quietness, not even a breath of wind, and looking upon snow-capped mountains and valleys as far as the eye could see. But now it was time for me to head down as it looked like potential storm clouds in the distance. I camped just beyond Camp Hale that night and finished up Segment 8 early the next morning at Tennessee Pass. Segment 9. This is where I really began to fall behind schedule with hopes of getting to Twin Lakes by the end of the week. It starts at Tennessee Pass and takes you into the Holy Cross Wilderness. I hiked in about 6 miles and was about to make a 1,000-foot climb over the next 2 miles when I noticed some nasty-looking thunderclouds approaching quickly. It was around 1 p.m., so I decided to set up camp and wait out the storm, hoping to press on after it passed over. I recall hanging out in my hammock, nice and warm, watching episodes of Seinfeld on my phone, looking at whiteout conditions and thinking how surreal it was to be in the middle of nowhere, in a huge snowstorm, temps dropping below freezing, and still not having seen another person for the second day in a row. In a strange way, I loved it. I wasn't scared or worried what might have happened or could have happened. I just remember sitting there in my hammock thinking this was the coolest thing ever. Now I knew backpacking was for me. The storm continued on through the night and did not stop until noon the next day.
After a long wait, Segment 9, from thunderstorms, snowstorms actually yesterday, and snow and windstorms all this morning. I didn't get to leave till about 1:30. Things settle down. I don't want to cross this pass in a storm, but it's definitely worth the wait.
I only hiked around 4 miles that day, getting over the pass and camping at a beautiful lake. Unfortunately, this put me a full day behind schedule, but I didn't care. I was having the time of my life. Segment 10 was short but sweet. It was a beautiful forest with rolling hills, and you get your first good glimpse of Mount Elbert and Mount Massive. I had texted my wife the night before on my Garmin inReach, telling her to meet me at the Mount Massive trailhead in Leadville instead of Twin Lakes. This was definitely a year to remember. If you have never hiked in a wooded forest covered in snow, it is something special. The quiet you experience is like no other, and you feel like you are walking in a winter wonderland that only existed in your imagination. I hiked only 65 miles that year to Leadville, but I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I thought this was tough hiking. Little did I know what Collegiate West had in store for me next year. In 2021, Nancy dropped me off at the Mount Massive trailhead in Leadville. This year I was planning to hike the first half of Segment 11 and then connect with the Collegiate West portion of the trail. I would then finish up hiking a portion of Segment 15 and finish up at Marshall Pass just outside of Salida. They say West is best because of its big views, but those big views come with big climbs, and these climbs would test my physical limits to the point of breaking. Segment 11 was a good segment for breaking in my legs for this trip. It started off with gentle rolling hills, hiking through a nice aspen forest, and then gradually descending down to Twin Lakes. From there, the terrain was flat as you were hiking around Twin Lakes. I don't think you realize how large these lakes are until you begin to hike around them. It felt like it was taking me forever. Maybe that had something to do with the sun beating down on me. You are completely exposed to the sun during this stretch until you reach the south side of the lakes. Then you reach that critical trail junction where every Colorado trail hiker has to decide, Collegiate West or Collegiate East.
They say west is best. You're higher up on the ridge. better views, a little more exposed, but it's supposed to be beautiful.
I've always heard west is best. I was about to find out how true that statement is. Collegiate West 1. I hiked a few more miles that first day and camped just below Hope Pass on the north side. Hope Pass. What can I say about Hope Pass? In my opinion, Hope Pass is the most difficult pass on the entire Colorado Trail. Why? Maybe because it was the highest pass I had yet to experience on the Colorado Trail. Maybe because I was still trying to get my trail legs for this week's trip. Maybe because I was 48 years old at the time and my body just couldn't hack it. It just felt like I was hiking straight up and it would never end.
Oh man, my heart is saying thank you for stop climbing that mountain. So, that bad view's going down, the wind is getting less, so looking forward to cruising down the rest of the day.
It wasn't just the hike up that was painful, but also the hike down. I recall having more switchbacks hiking down, but it was steep. Steep to the point where I was taking small, shuffling steps and trying not to slip and fall for the next 2.5 miles. I remember finally getting to the bottom of the pass and thinking, am I too old for this? My body just felt wrecked. But if you know me, the answer to that question is a resounding no. I simply took a well-needed rest, replenished my body with electrolytes and trail mix, and pressed forward. Collegiate West 2 was another tough stretch, as I would later realize was a common theme this year on the Colorado Trail. This time I camped just on the north side of Lake Ann Pass. I generally like to camp at the base of a pass before a steep climb because it gives me fresh legs the next morning to tackle it and get it out of the way. If Hope Pass was the toughest pass on the Colorado Trail, then I would say that Lake Ann Pass is the second toughest. Maybe my body was still recovering from yesterday's climb over Hope Pass, but I remember getting to the top of Lake Ann Pass was exhausting. But even though these passes were kicking my butt, the stunning views from the top made all the pain and suffering worth it. Like I've said before, there's nothing like coming over a pass on the Colorado Trail. The descent down was gradual and not nearly as taxing on my legs as coming down Hope Pass. I hiked another 11 to 12 miles, setting up camp just before my approach to Cottonwood Pass. These next 25 miles would be the toughest stretch of hiking in my life.
Tomorrow is going to be probably our longest and hardest day. We've got to go over Cottonwood Pass. I don't think the pass is going to be as hard as Hope or Lake Ann. I'm probably about 3 miles from crossing it. But once I get over Cottonwood Pass, then I'm going to stay up there on the ridge for about 6 or 7 miles. And I really don't have any good camping options for 20 miles. So tomorrow's probably going to be my longest day yet. So I wake up a little early and we're going to go tackle it. It's supposed to be some amazing views. So hopefully we have weather like we did today. Blue skies, no clouds. That's what we're looking for tomorrow. So we will see you in the morning.
Collegiate West 3. Talk about amazing views.
say, do the west side. They say collegiate west is best. Well, they don't tell you is that it kicks your butt. At least it's kicking my butt. So these views are stunning. It's amazing, but they come at a cost. Whew, that's your lungs and your legs. Only got a little bit more going up this little to the top, right up there. This will be my fourth climb of the day, and I got two more to go before I can get to a spot where I can camp for the night. So it's beautiful, but it's wrecking me. All right, I made it over my sixth and final climb, and now I've just got about 4 miles down to my campsite. Whew, I never yelled so loud at the top of a pass. I almost cried, I ain't lying. That was brutal, to say the least. But so far I've got some nice, easy down switchbacks. Hopefully that will remain for the rest of the 4 miles. We'll see. But since I've already had dinner, I think that helped me have some little energy. I'm just gonna set up my hammock and go straight to bed. And then do it all over again tomorrow.
I couldn't believe what I had accomplished. It was one of my fondest memories on the trail. It was the toughest day of hiking I've ever had, but also the most rewarding. Collegiate West 4. The hike through this section was an overcast and rainy day. I remember crossing a couple of passes that day, and it felt like I was being chased by storms as I continuously saw dark thunderclouds in the distance.
It's been overcast, a little bit rainy, not too much. I mean, I definitely got my frog togs on. But just kind of a dreary day. This would have been a horrible day for me yesterday if it had been like this. But today we've been mostly in the trees, so not a lot of views anyway. Just sprinkling on and off. My last big issue is getting this climb I have in front of me. There are some dark clouds over it, but no thunder, definitely no lightning, not any rain at all. So we're gonna go for it. Whew. Last climb of the day. The rest is downhill. Oh, man, looks much better on this side in terms of weather. But I think there's rain coming my way, so I'm gonna head down.
I camped at Boss Lake that night after a soggy day of hiking, looking forward to changing into my camp clothes, drying off, and getting rest to tackle the last section of the Collegiate West at Monarch Pass the next day. Collegiate West 5. This was another beautiful section as the Collegiate West continued to deliver. I remember hiking out from Boss Lake and ascending 1,500 feet to the Continental Divide and hiking along the side of Bald Mountain. I recall two non-typical things occurring during this section of the trail. First, the trail goes right through the Monarch Ski Resort. It passes by at the top of the slopes where the ski lift drops you off. It was non-operational during these summer months, so I had lunch that day in one of the chairlifts while letting some of my gear dry.
So we had a big storm come in last night. Held on me a bit, and so my tarp is soaking wet. Didn't really have a chance to dry it. So I was like, oh, here I am, sunshine, nice breeze. Hopefully she'll be dry in a few minutes. And yeah, it does make me a bit nervous, but they're secured on there pretty good. So hopefully it won't fly away.
The second cool thing I encountered was a souvenir shop at the top of Monarch Pass. It was clearly marked in my guidebook, but I must have overlooked it. But let me tell you, I had never been so happy to see that store as the trail crosses over Highway 50 at Monarch Pass.
That was one of the most delightful places that I've been. Not sure why I didn't take any video of it. I did take a picture coming down from the trail, but the Monarch Pass, where it crosses the highway, has a awesome food and gift shop. So I had a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. I had homemade rainbow sherbet, and I was able to pick up some stuff for my lips, some bliss sticks, pick up some extra sunscreen because I've been going through that like crazy.
I pressed on for another 7 to 8 miles as I finished up the Collegiate West and reconnected back with the original route for the Colorado Trail midway through segment 15. Segment 15 is fairly nondescript, at least the portion of the trail that I hiked. I only hiked the last 6 miles of segment 15 until it reaches Marshall Pass. This is where my journey would end for this year's trip. I camped my final night only a couple miles from the Marshall Pass trailhead, experiencing a beautiful sunset. What a way to end this year's trip. It was a brutal but beautiful year on the trail, one I will never forget. After surviving this section of the trail, I knew nothing was going to stop me from reaching the end. In 2022, I knew I had some miles I needed to make up because of the snowstorm in 2020. This year I would hike segments 16 through 24, totaling about 144 miles, my longest stretch of continuous hiking ever. Segments 16 and 17. These two are easily forgettable. These were probably my least two favorite sections on the trail, and that is saying something since I got heat exhaustion and almost quit after segment 2. It was fairly easy hiking through a forest and rolling hills. Every now and then you would get a glimpse of a mountain view, but nothing memorable. The thing I recall the most about these two sections was the lack of water and having to carry several liters at a time, and all the cows. Man, there were a bunch of cows. Most of the time when you did find a water source, it had cow poop in it. It was a tough stretch mentally just trying to bang out these miles and get to segment 18.
Glad those two are done. Those two need to get done. Just hammer through it. I hear 18 and 19 are good. We're kind of cruising, making good time, so that'll be hopefully nice on my legs. And then around segment 20 is when the big views start coming in to picture. So looking forward to that. On to segment 18.
Segment 18 starts off at Highway 114 and gradually ascends over the next few miles. The views started opening up as you come out of the forest, and it started feeling like the Colorado Trail again, especially with the typical afternoon thunderstorms.
A few things from last night I'd like to report on. So, I went 22.7 miles yesterday into camp. So I knew I was going to get into camp around 6:30. Well, about a mile and a half, man, there were thunder clouds rolling all over me. I was getting rained on a little bit, but you could see that it was coming, like a big storm was coming. And I was still about a mile and a half away from camp. Let me tell you, that last mile and a half were probably my two fastest, it was probably my fastest mile all day, just trying to get into camp before the rain comes. And it seemed like it was going to die down a little bit, so I thought maybe I kind of missed it. I tell you, as soon as I put up my tent, it just bottom fell out. And so thank you, Lord, for a good time in there, getting to camp a little bit earlier than I thought. I made some good miles, some good time at the end of the day, and getting that tent set up.
I hiked the remaining 4 miles of segment 18 with relative ease, and the views just kept getting better and better. Segment 19 was an interesting day. It started off nice with beautiful blue skies and big open prairie views with mountains in the distance. Then at my first water source, there was a dead cow rotting in the water. Guess I won't be filling up there. Then by noon that day, I had lunch and pulled out my tent to let it dry out from the night before. Yes, you heard me correctly. I am backpacking with the tent.
So I am normally a hammock camper, but the last like 4 or 5 segments of this one are above tree line, and so it's going to be really hard to find a hammock place. And plus, being over tree line, it'd be good to kind of get a shelter in place. So I decided to go ahead and bring the tent.
Anyway, after lunch, it started raining on and off the rest of the day. I thought it was a beautiful section of the trail. I recall hiking by this meandering stream through an open prairie surrounded by mountains. The rain made it difficult to enjoy while I battled to find moments of sunshine to continue to dry off my gear.
Whew. Crazy weather we're having today here on day 3. Segment 19 has been really pretty. It's had some nice valley views, actually some water, some big blue skies this morning and plenty of sunshine, and thought it was going to be a beautiful day. Stopped to have lunch. Gonna start laying my stuff out to dry, and then in about 15 minutes clouds start rolling in as I go. So my tent got a little dry, not all the way, and then it rained for probably the next couple hours, and then I had a nice stream crossing here where I was able to see the sun came out again, and again, so I laid out my tent. Maybe 15 minutes later, it started raining. You can see the raincoat I still have on. The sun looks like it's peeking out right now. So hopefully, it's hard to tell. It's like there's clouds all around us. It's hard to tell where the rain is coming from. But it's been on and off. But tent is dry, so I should be able to sleep dry tonight, which is always a blessing.
I made it all the way through segment 19, finished up hiking alongside a mountain, and camped at Eddiesville Trailhead, the beginning of segment 20. Segment 20. This was the beginning of some of the most epic hiking on the Colorado Trail. I remember having a long day of hiking, so I woke up early with the sunrise, and it was cool to see the fog hang low in the valley as you are making your way up to the saddle below San Luis Peak. What a beautiful morning and even better afternoon. I felt like I was hiking in the clouds. I was climbing to the top of ridges, hiking over saddles, looking down into green valleys and mountain peaks as far as the eye could see.
Now this is the Colorado Trail that I know and love and come back to any year. Those first few segments, they're tough on the feet, tough on the spirit. It's raining, and then you don't get rewarded with views like this. Oh man. So you can see there's one more pass right there we have to climb for today. I think that is actually San Luis Pass. Not sure what the pass is that we just came over. That is San Luis Peak. That's where I just came from, the saddle over there. So, beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I had several climbs through this segment, but there were spectacular views at every turn. I had one last climb to end this segment at San Luis Pass. It was an exhausting day, but exhilarating. The monotony of segments 16 through 18 had now been replaced with eye-popping, magnificent views at every mile. Segment 21. I had 4 more miles to hike that day, but what I didn't realize was that I had 3 more significant climbs over those 4 miles instead of just 1 like I had originally thought. This may sound odd, but I wasn't mentally prepared for it. There's something about thinking that your hard part of the day is done and you only had to cruise the next 4 miles, only to find out that your hardest climbs are yet to come. Let me tell you, those 3 climbs kicked my butt.
That is pass number 4, and I know it's down the rest of the way, and we're up. So, 16.7 turned into 18.7, and one good climb turned into 4. So this was a shorter day than like the 22, 23, but a little more physical demanding, but beautiful. I mean, look, it is stunning up here.
I finally made it to camp early that evening near a pond, nestled in the mountains with beavers playing. How cool is that? The next morning, I had a 1,000-foot climb over the next 4 miles to reach the saddle of the Continental Divide. The views were stunning. I remember the early morning sun hitting the valley floor with bright blue skies on a crisp, cool morning as I approached the Continental Divide. And believe it or not, the views just got better as I was approaching the Snow Mesa and getting my first look at the chalk-colored rock formations. The Snow Mesa is where I've heard stories from hikers about horrendous thunderstorms and being totally exposed with nowhere to bail out. Lucky for me, it was a beautiful morning with bright blue skies. This is easily one of my favorite sections on the trail, because as you are hiking down into the Snow Mesa and across this huge expanse, you get your first peek of the San Juan mountain range. What a glorious sight. I knew that is where I was headed and couldn't wait to get there. Segment 22. This was a special segment for me. I was hiking my 5th day on the trail for this week, and I was averaging over 20 plus miles a day. I recall getting to the top of a saddle a few miles into segment 22 and just feeling so broken, but yet so blessed to be out here.
The reward is so great, even though the effort takes so much, right? It's because not everybody comes out here and does this. And so it is a sense of achievement for me, and I'm very happy to be able to accomplish things like this. And then one of my favorite quotes from A League of Their Own, when Tom Hanks is talking to Gina Davis, because Gina Davis is about to quit because it just got too hard. You know, she was the MVP of the league, and it just got too hard. And Tom Hanks tells him, it's like, it's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everybody would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. And I'm choking up. It is the hard. It's the heart that makes all this worth it. The sore feet and legs and the blisters, and you know, sometimes just going up these steep inclines just hurts. But I don't know, being out here and God giving me the ability to come out here and having the health to do this. Yeah, I don't know why. I've choked up a couple times a day thinking about it. But it's just such a blessing to be out here, even though I am suffering a little bit. But I love it. I don't want to do it all the time, but I love it. So I just want to share some of the great things that I get to experience and why I come out here.
This is where I had my glamping experience on the trail. I walked up to the yurt to check out and see what the deal was with being able to sleep there that night.
All right, you're not going to believe this. I knew there was a yurt at this area where I was going to camp. And so I was going to camp down there. There's a little marshy area with a little creek. I didn't really find any good camp spots. I didn't even see the yurt. And I came back to the creek, and then I saw it. And then here it is. got like 4 bunks inside of it, and nobody's here. And then check out this view. So I'm just on the deck of the Earth. So yeah, let's see if we can. How cool is that, huh? Let's check out the inside. Some new shoes. Stay out. Just some bunks. Not sure why I broke down on the trail later this afternoon. I think just it's been an exhausting. I'm on day 5. I just hiked another 20 miles over 3 more passes, and it's just been hard physically. Been hard, and mentally it's kind of been hard as well, just trying to get through some of these harder segments and segments that aren't as rewarding. And so I think I'm just kind of mentally and physically drained. But I also think it's just, I think I'm blessed. I am blessed to have a wonderful wife who loves and supports me in doing this. She drops me off at the trailhead, and she dropped me off at Salida, which is like 4.5 hours, and then she has to drive back, and she's going to pick me up in Silverton. And so just having her love and support, and just God giving me the health to do this at age 49. And I feel just thankful as well. And I think it just kind of it welled up a few times today as I was just thinking about it, just being in God's creation. So I'm thankful and blessed, and this year was kind of just a godsend. I think the sun is going to set right over on the other side of those mountains, and it's going to be spectacular.
I was glad to have been in the yurt that evening because after settling in for a few hours, it began to hail hard for the next 15 minutes. Fortunately, the hail stopped, and it turned out to be a beautiful evening with the sunset over the mountains. I woke up early the next morning before the sunrise because I needed to get to camp early as there were bad thunderstorms forecasted for early that afternoon. Plus, I would be hiking over the highest point on the Colorado Trail that day and didn't want to be exposed during the storms. This day of hiking will always be special to me. Segment 22 is definitely one of my favorite segments. I'm glad I got up early that morning to experience those views before the rain. I wasn't so lucky with segment 23. Segment 23. I made it the first 5.5 miles to Cataract Lake with clear weather, where I would camp that night.
I had a bad view from inside my tent, but you can see some storm clouds, but they've been like that for the past couple hours. You just don't know if it's ever going to fall on you or not.
But then it started raining early that afternoon, and it didn't stop for the next 24 hours. This was one of those segments where I felt like I missed out on what this segment has to offer. Early the next morning, there was a break in the rain, so I decided to break down camp and head out for the day. It quickly started raining again, and it just didn't stop or let up this entire segment. I was trying to have a positive attitude and imagine that I was hiking through Scotland, as the rain and low-hanging clouds gave it a cool but eerie feel to the day's hike. You could tell that this was a beautiful section of the trail, and it still was in spite of the rain, but I would have loved to seen it with the blue skies and sunshine lighting up these mountain walls and valley floors. But instead, the rain just continued to batter me that entire day. But I kept trying to be positive. It could be worse. It could be thunder and lightning, which would have been terrifying at this elevation with no place to seek shelter. Then, towards the end of segment 23, as I was approaching Stony Pass Road, my spirit began to break.
The weather's turned from bad to miserable. Oh my goodness. Just finally let up. It's been raining all day.
I had hiked the last 10 miles in the most miserable weather, and I just wanted it to stop. I wanted it to be over.
That last bit just got brutal. Not because of the trail or anything, but the weather just got really bad. The wind started blowing hard. Started raining harder. Like, oh, I just needed a break, and lo and behold, if you can tell, one, it's not raining. Two, the sun is trying to poke out, and I can see signs of blue skies, but don't know if those are headed my way or not.
I convinced myself to finish what I had started and continued forward to segment 24, with the hope that the patch of blue sky would be a sign of good things to come. It wasn't. Segment 24 is probably my favorite section on the Colorado Trail. I was thankful that the rain had stopped, which gave me a glimpse of how stunning the scenery would be through this section. I had clear weather for the first several miles, then the wind and rain returned, and I was socked in by fog and could only see a few hundred feet in front of me. That was a tough stretch. I was above 12,000 feet with no place to find shelter or seek refuge from the storm. I simply put my head down and pounded out the next 3 or 4 miles until you reach the big descent down to Elk Creek on the valley floor. As I approached the drop-off, the wind quit blowing, the fog lifted, and the rain stopped. And the view before me was one of the most spectacular sights on the Colorado Trail. And my descent down to the valley floor felt like I was walking in another world. As I descended down, the sun started to peek out, and I was surrounded by mountain walls with several cascading waterfalls, glistening in the sun and mist from the rain. It felt like a dream. It had been such a long, hard day of hiking, but this stretch coming down to the valley floor to set up camp will be one that I will never forget. It was probably my worst and favorite day of hiking, and that only makes sense on the Colorado Trail. The next morning would be a short 6-mile hike up to Mullis Pass at the end of segment 24. It was a beautiful sunny day, total opposite of the day before.
As you can see, it is beautiful blue skies as compared to yesterday, which was probably one of the most miserable days of hiking in my entire life, but also had some of the most beautiful moments I've ever seen. So it was a very odd day as it rained on me for probably 10 hours as I was hiking, with little bits of, breaks in between and sunshine every now and then until the very end of the day.
I hiked through the valley floor with the mist still rising from the ground. I hiked along the Animas River until I reached the train tracks and then started ascending up to Mullis Pass. They were gentle switchbacks which made for easy hiking. I got to the Mullis Pass overlook area on Highway 50 and waited for Nancy to pick me up. I was so exhausted from the day before and hiking over 140 miles through some of the toughest terrain on the trail. I was completely spent, but couldn't have been happier. It was one of the best weeks of my life.
I will see you back here in 1 year to knock out the rest of the 70 miles.
Here we are, 2023, 5 years from when I first started this crazy journey of hiking the Colorado Trail. I only had 4 segments left to hike, segments 25 through 28, totaling around 75 miles. It seemed a bit surreal as Nancy once again dropped me off at my starting point, this time at Mullis Pass, and within a week I will have reached Durango, completing the Colorado Trail. I thought there was no way these segments could live up to the epic hiking I experienced last year. Man, was I wrong. Segment 25. What a pleasant surprise of a segment. It started off at Mullis Lake and covered some of the most scenic terrain on the trail. The trail begins with a gradual ascent to amazing views of captivating mountains and lush green valleys. I hiked only 6 miles that day, in no rush to finish, and enjoyed a beautiful view from my campsite that evening. The next day I would continue my casual pace and only hike 9 miles. The scenery just kept getting better and better as I made my way up to my first pass. Welcome back to the Colorado Trail, my first pass, and it's kicking my butt a little bit. It's the first pass of my trip, but at 12,000 feet, this wind is blowing, there's no switchbacks. The Colorado Trail says, welcome back, Crimson Blaze. It was a good reminder not to take these last few segments for granted and give the trail the respect it deserves. It was a cold and windy day, and being above tree line, I was completely exposed to the elements. It was beautiful at the top of this pass, but I was ready to get down below tree line and get out of this wind. Had a few miles where I would set up camp for the night at Cascade Creek Falls. This was probably one of my best campsites on the entire Colorado Trail, as I was only feet from a deep canyon with a magnificent waterfall crashing down on the rocks. I only had 6 miles left to hike in segment 25, but it continued to deliver until the very last step. I hiked through a lovely forest area with stunning views of mountains in the distance. There was an interesting creek where it appeared that all the rocks were bleached white, and just as I was wrapping up the segment, I had a final climb over a saddle only to be greeted with more amazing mountain views and ending at beautiful Celebration Lake. I'm not sure why I thought segment 25 would be such a letdown from last year, but it turns out it was one of my favorite segments on the trail. Let's see if segment 26 will continue to deliver. Segment 26. This is where I had my first trail magic, and it came at the most opportune time. I was starting segment 26 around noontime at Celebration Lake and had already planned to stop there for lunch that day. As I was approaching the lake, I saw this cooler with the words Trail Magic on it. I was beyond thrilled to find trail magic, and when I opened it up and found cold Dr. Peppers to drink, I became ecstatic. That's what backpacking does for you. It helps you appreciate the little things. I had a great lunch and continued on my journey for the day. It was a pleasant trail with some nice mountain views and open prairies. There were a couple of decent climbs with scenic views looking down into green valleys, but the thing I remember the most is hiking up to Black Hawk Pass. It just seemed impossible that the trail was going to take us over that pass. It wasn't really that tough of a pass, it just looked daunting.
There's nothing like getting to the top of a pass. So that's where I came from. This is Black Hawk Pass, I believe. And now, get to descend. A couple more miles to camp. We'll be good to go.
I love hiking in the mountains because no two mountain views are the same. The views are always changing on the trail, always something new to experience. I made camp that night near a stream, the last reliable source of water for the next 22 miles. The next morning I loaded up with 5 liters of water. Now let the real hiking begin. The last few miles of segment 26 were uneventful, which would be the case for most of segment 27, until you reach the spectacular Indian Trail Ridge. Segment 27. The first 12 miles was through a pleasant forest with rolling hills, hiking along the side of a mountain. It was a very scenic view. It was just the same view over and over. The trail would come in and out of the woods, opening up to the same view for most of these 12 miles. Again, it was a nice view and a nice section of the trail, but after a while, it just started getting to be monotonous. Maybe I had been spoiled by the previous 2 segments, but I was just eager to get to camp. Eager because I knew tomorrow would be a much different day than today. Tomorrow, I would be hiking up to Indian Trail Ridge. The next morning, I left camp early because I wanted to get to the top of Indian Trail Ridge before noon. Indian Trail Ridge is notorious for lightning storms, and I hear that you shouldn't cross over it if there are ominous clouds in the sky. Lucky for me, the weather was perfect with bright blue skies, very little wind, and no clouds. This is Indian Trail Ridge.
hike the Colorado Trail. It's like this.
After an Indian Trail ridge, I only had a few miles left until I reached the end of the segment at the Kennebec Trailhead. But segment 27 wasn't done yet. As you are hiking down Indian Trail Ridge, you get this gorgeous view of Taylor Lake surrounded by mountains. Taylor Lake signaled the end of the 22-mile water drought during this section, as well as my lunch spot for that day. I sat there at the lake thinking I could not be happier on how this trip is wrapping up. The weather had been great all week, and I've been blown away by the views at every turn. I finished up my last mile of the segment hiking to Kennebec Trailhead. One more segment to go. Nothing was going to stop me now. Segment 28 starts off at the Kennebec Trailhead, and within the first half mile you hike over Kennebec Pass. This is definitely the most scenic part of this segment, as you are hiking alongside this rock wall and you get your first glimpse of Durango in the distance. From there, it's a pretty significant downhill hike, as I would descend over 3,200 feet in the next 6 miles until I reached camp. It was an uneventful hike as you drop down into the forest. This would be my last night camping on the Colorado Trail. I tried to let that sink in and reminisce about my 5-year adventure and all the amazing campsites I had experienced along the way. I found a nice campsite on Junction Creek near the bridge and set up my hammock one last time. My final day on trail would be a time of reflection. I still had 15 miles to hike, and most of that would be cruisy downhill hiking. It was a beautiful morning, and I tried to savor every step as I was hiking through a forest. It's bittersweet, really. This joyful anticipation is growing inside of me as I near the end of my epic journey. There's also a bit of sadness there too. I love being out here so much. I will miss struggling up to the top of a pass and witnessing these magnificent mountain views. I will miss the freezing cold temperatures as you roll out of your hammock only to have the sun warm your face. I will miss curling up in my hammock at night, surrounded by a quilted down and falling asleep to the sounds of a nearby creek. I will miss the ache of my body after hiking a 20-plus mile day and setting up my hammock for lounging and enjoying a good hot meal. I could go on, but it simply comes down to this. I will miss the trail. I will miss the adventure. But I try to snap out of it and tell myself there's still adventure to be had this very day. It's not over yet. That's when I reached Goody's Rest. There's a bench with a wonderful view, and it was a good opportunity to take a rest and just enjoy one last mountain view. As I made my approach to the southern terminus on the Colorado Trail, I had my final thoughts about the trail and my backpacking adventure.
In 2019, I remember standing at Waterton Canyon with my wife and kids as they were dropping me off, and I was dreaming about hiking the Colorado Trail. I had been probably a weekend warrior type of backpacker, 2 nights, 3 days at the most, and I didn't know if I would love the longer hikes, the thru-hikes or section hikes. You see it on YouTube, and it is kind of romanticized, and I wanted to test myself, and this was the beginning of that journey back in 2019.
where I had a dream of hiking the Colorado Trail and finding out, do I love it? Do I really love the cold mornings? Do I love the big hikes up passes? Do I love just the hurt and pain that you experience? And I've found out, yeah, I do. Now it's 2023. I'm about to come here to the end of the trailhead, and I would say the Colorado Trail has made me fall in love with backpacking. Again, I know that may sound corny to some. I'm not trying to be. I've always loved camping, occasional backpacker, but I think this journey has showed me how much I love to go backpacking. I love it all. Just want to, take special note of how wonderful this journey has been and how I've grown through it, how my gear has changed, and I cannot wait to cross that line. All right, see the finish line. 5 years, 485 miles. We are finally here at the end of the Colorado Trail in Durango. Oh, feels good. Welcome to Colorado Trail Durango. Well, I can't believe I made it. My wife said if I was gonna get him, chilling or not. Dude, I haven't been emotional at all this trip at all. I mean, it's literally happened the last 10 seconds walking up. And I think it's just the flood of getting it done and 5 years of hard work, and I've loved every minute of it. I've loved every minute of it.
I know I'm not your typical thru hiker, as most hikers are half my age. I'm definitely not your typical vlogger, as I rely mostly on my smartphone with shaky footage. But I love backpacking and hiking, and I enjoy capturing beautiful moments while on my adventures that I want to share with my family and friends. Life is too short to merely watch others living adventurously. It was time to go and make some memories of my own. It was time to hike the Colorado Trail. It may not have been the most standard approach of a long thru hike, but it was my way. It was what worked for me. I created my own path, my own journey. A journey that was not about what others would think about my hike, but about what I thought I could accomplish. I gained so much knowledge and experience on how to be a better backpacker. I learned that I do have what it takes, and no adventure is too big. I am so grateful for the Colorado Trail. It has made me fall in love with backpacking. The good news about this story is that this is not the end, but only the beginning.